Boy, again, this is another day where I just don't know where to start. Um, do I talk about the financial stuff of Hunter Biden's? Do I talk about the fake hoax that the media is using to deflect from Hunter Biden, sort of a straw man Hunter Biden scandal? Or do I talk about his sexcapades? And I guess the answer has to be all three. The first thing I'll start with is this fake Hunter Biden scandal that now the media is covering and that they're debunking. It is something that I had never heard of. It is something that nobody had heard of. It's something that, kind of like Richard Spencer, nobody would have heard of if not for the media trumpeting them as a straw man to attack the right. And I don't know the details of this, but basically they dug up some anti-Hunter Biden dossier, similar to the Steele dossier that was used to attack Trump by the left. And people, I guess the media realizes now that the average person knows that the Steele dossier was BS, and so if they come out and say, look, the Republicans have a Hunter dossier, well, we know that that's nonsense, and look at all these ridiculous claims in here that are totally unsubstantiated. This is fake news. See, no Hunter Biden scandal, even though that's not anything that anybody was talking about, this, whatever this fake dossier thing is. I'm sure it is just as fake as the Steele dossier. I haven't read it, never heard of it. I'm looking at all the other real evidence that people are putting out there. And to me, seeing the media do this really just confirms that they have no defense for Hunter Biden, because why would they be out here strawmanning this when they could be attacking the actual stuff that people are saying? Like I look at this stuff of Hunter Biden, the really bad sexual stuff, like the pictures of him naked next to a minor. These are things that I really, really want to believe are not true, but when the media refuses to defend him, when the media doesn't come out and say, like, look at this ridiculous fake news, they're looking at this dossier thing that nobody was paying attention to and saying, hey, this is fake news, look at how ridiculous these claims are. But they're not even trying to do that with the pictures of Hunter and the minor that people actually are talking about, that people actually do think is real. I mean, that to me should be the first thing that the media is trying to debunk. The media should be taking these Hunter Biden pedo accusations, trumpeting them, using them as the straw man to knock down and to say, look at all these fake Hunter Biden conspiracy theories. They say he's a pedo. Isn't that ridiculous? And the only reason I can think that they wouldn't be doing that, because again, this would be a great way to distract from the financial crimes, from the corruption scandal, which much more directly implicates Joe Biden. They could use Hunter Biden's sexual problems to deflect from the things that directly implicate Joe Biden. But again, they're not doing that for some reason, and the only reason I can think is that they don't have a good defense themselves, which is pretty scary. It makes me think that gee, maybe this isn't a deep fake. Because again, that's the least the media could do. They could at least come out and say, this is a deep fake, don't believe it. Even if it ends up being true, they can say that. They're not even trying to say it's a deep fake. So, I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're all in on? I mean, Dave Smith pointed out last week, before any of this started coming out, Jake Tapper floated a trial balloon to his audience, talking about, saying, hey, in the coming week, you're going to hear horrible things, horrible accusations, the most terrible things that I can't even say on my show about Hunter Biden. And just know that it's all fake. And he didn't get any specifics, and it was a very creepy omen. And Dave Smith caught that clip, and he said, "Oh my gosh, it sounds like Jake Tapper definitely knows something that we don't, and it probably involves Hunter Biden and kids. So maybe that stuff actually is real." Because again, at that time, it was just a weird rumor going around the internet. And the first time I heard that, when the Hunter Biden laptop first came out, I started seeing people on Twitter talking about, "Oh my God, Hunter Biden was touching kids." I'm like, "Oh, stop it! He can't be that evil." But then Rudy floated something about it, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, why would Rudy imply something like that if he didn't have something to back it up?" And then here comes Joe Hoff with the picture, because I mean, who's going to publish something like that other than Gateway Pundit? I certainly wouldn't if I had a website. I wouldn't want that stuff anywhere near my server. So at this point, based on the media's silence, I think it's probably, we have to accept that it's somewhat true that Hunter Biden, was walking around naked, high around his nieces and probably his own daughter, and that he had no problem opening his kimono with them around. And I borrow that phrase. It was both metaphorical and literal. He used it in his interview with 60 Minutes last year, I believe, where he was saying to them when they were asking about all his financial deals, he's like, hey, I don't have to open my kimono for you. And then here, lo and behold, here's this picture of him opening his kimono right next to what appears to be his late brother's daughter. Horrifying stuff that I really, really don't want to think about, and that I don't even want to talk about. So let's move on to the update on all the financial crimes. Yesterday, James Rosen, who was tracked and spied on by the NSA in 2016, I want to say, or and maybe it was at an earlier point. This was something that came out in the WikiLeaks, I think, at some point. So anyway, James Rosen, I would have to think he's a pretty good guy based on that. If the intelligence community thinks that he's a threat, then he's probably a good journalist. Well, he was told by the DOJ that they are in fact investigating Hunter Biden for money laundering since 2019. And if Hunter Biden is implicated in money laundering, well, Joe Biden is really. I mean, is it really even fair to say that he's at arm's length from Hunter Biden's business dealings at this point? I tend to think that that they've made a good case that, as Rudy says, Hunter was the bag man. And so to me, that's pretty much confirmation that that Joe Biden is under investigation for money laundering. And, this is not going to be as significant as the Comey letter, because the director of the FBI didn't just come straight out and say that, and there's a reason for that I'll get to in a second. The director of the FBI didn't come out and make a big statement and say, we're going to reopen our investigation into Hillary Clinton, and make a big deal about it, which, had an effect on the election. I remember I was sitting at Ale House, which is a restaurant here, and I saw that come across the Chiron on TV, and I'm like, oh my God, Trump has a chance now. Now, a lot of people argue whether that was really what did Trump in or not, or rather what Hillary did in Hillary or not, but that's how it felt at the time. May not be true, but it makes for a good story. Well, now we have something very similar happening to Joe Biden right before the election comes out, that there is this criminal investigation that, if it wasn't squashed by him, after he's elected, would eventually implicate him. Now, the reason why Christopher Wray and why the FBI probably isn't doing a whole ton on this whole scandal and why we're just hearing about this in the news rather than hearing about it, because something's going to trial, is that apparently Christopher Wray was involved in some of these Hunter and Joe Biden business dealings. And again, who knows, maybe this is a smear, but this is just something that came out this morning. He represented Rosneft in a deal trying to sell 15% of the company to China, which would help them circumvent sanctions on Russia, ironically placed on Russia by Trump. And Christopher Wray, represented Rosneft and was working with the Bidens on that deal. Now, again, this is something that I just saw right before I went to record, so it might be debunked later or it might be exaggerated, but it's something that, let's just say it rings true at this point, because Christopher Wray, again, has not done anything on this whole issue. Yeah, so at this point, considering how much traction all these stories are gaining amongst people who are not on television, the media's silence really is deafening. They're the only people not chipping in on this. Of course, Biden's totally silent on this, and it really, to me, makes him look much worse. I really wanted to see, a virulent denial of these accusations, of these pictures. I want to hear that they're fake. Trust me, I'm very open to hearing Joe Biden tell me that his son is not a pedophile, and that I'm not that open to hearing Joe Biden tell me he's not corrupt. I don't believe that. Every politician's corrupt. What Joe Biden had going on here is very bad, but it's not unusual, unfortunately. Now, that doesn't mean he should get a pass for it. I think every politician should be held to account for it. And again, this is something that was discussed The Joe Biden stuff, I first heard about from Peter Schweitzer years ago, and you know, the name of his book at the time was "Throw Them All Out." So, you know, this is I tend to agree with that position. I'm not a fan of corruption. I'm not a fan of politicians, period. So yes, throw them all out, including Joe Biden. So with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.